Hey yo, everyone! Conspiracy theories are fun, right? At least for the most part. There are some that I just downright dismiss, but others that have just enough evidence to make me say, sure, why not? So today, I've compiled a list of 10 video game conspiracies that I think actually have some weight to them. Some of these are just in-game lore, while others are about the broader gaming industry, but at the end of the day, they're all just fun fan theories that will make your head scratch. Like all other conspiracy theories, the more you poke at them, the more they deflate in legitimacy. So ultimately, it's up to you and your personal judgment on whether or not any of these are worthwhile. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We're going for 1,000 subs and getting closer every week. Alright, let's get it. Alrighty, at number 10, let's kick things off with a classic. Ditto is a failed Mew clone. Everyone remembers Ditto, right? The little pink goo guy who can transform into other Pokemon.
Ditto, the transform Pokemon. Ditto has the ability to reconstruct its entire cellular structure into whatever it sees.
Well, there's a theory out there that Ditto is actually a failed recreation of the mythical Pokemon Mew. In Pokemon lore, Mew is one of the first ever Pokemon, supposedly containing the genetic code of every species. Along with that, Mew is the only other Pokemon known to have the natural ability to transform, just like Ditto. So, this theory states that when Pokemon researchers were attempting to create Mewtwo, the eventual successful clone of Mew, they ended up first with Ditto. They nailed the ability to transform, but they couldn't quite figure out that dumbass face Ditto always has. The similarities don't stop there though. Ditto and Mew also have very similar color schemes, so much so that even their respective shiny versions mimic each other. They also weigh the same exact weight, roughly 8.8 pounds, as mentioned in their Pokédex entries. Both Pokemon are also recorded as genderless with the ability to reproduce asexually in the wild. On top of that, Mew and Ditto are one of the few Pokemon to have retained their base stats in each new generation of Pokemon, indicating some sort of connection besides just their color scheme. But perhaps the biggest supporting piece of this theory is that Ditto's original spawn points are in the Pokemon Mansion and Cerulean Caves in Pokemon Yellow. These are key locations, as the Pokemon Mansion is where Mewtwo was created in a lab, and the Cerulean Caves is where Mewtwo eventually flees for refuge. If Ditto is in fact a byproduct of failed Mew cloning, then it makes perfect sense as to why its original spawn points are shared with the other, actual successful Mew clone. Now, nowhere in the world of Pokemon is this ever said to be true, at least as far as I know, but the evidence pointing to this theory being real is pretty substantial. Next up at number 9, let's take a look back at the console wars. Do you guys remember the Xbox One fiasco with DRM and the always online requirement? Well, there are a lot of reports that indicate Sony was planning on unveiling DRM for the PS4 as well, before backing out due to the Xbox One backlash. Digital Rights Management, or DRM for short, is the online verification system that prevents unauthorized use of software. Essentially, this meant that you had to check in with your Xbox online in order to play the games that you paid for. It's mainly intended to help prevent piracy, but for us gamers, its downsides far outweigh any positives. But the biggest issue is just the fact that you have to have a constant internet connection to play the games that you paid for, even if they're on a physical disc. I know that's not as big of a deal in 2025, but back in 2013, this was. Not everyone always had a stable internet connection, effectively removing the Xbox One as a console option. This also meant that the used game market would be drastically diminished, as the original purchaser of the game would be tied to each physical copy. There's a whole lot of other reasons as to why this was a terrible idea and never should have seen the light of day, but I think you get the point. Eventually, Xbox removed the DRM requirement, but the initial backlash did irreparable damage to the console's launch. Now, where does PlayStation come into any of this? Well, there are reports that Sony initially had DRM requirements as well, but backed off once Xbox announced theirs and was met with fire and fury from the gaming community. In the PS4's initial reveal, Sony avoided DRM completely, but then at a later date confirmed that they had no intention of implementing DRM and that there would be no restrictions for used games on their platform, even clowning Xbox in the process.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation
The conspiracy here is that Sony knew how the community would react to DRM and purposefully leaked that they were exploring the idea to bait Microsoft into implementing it into the Xbox One. Everyone knew that Sony was looking into DRM, and they even filed their own patent for it, so it certainly wasn't outside the realm of possibility. Plus, if Xbox wouldn't have received the backlash that it did, I think Sony would have absolutely implemented their own version of DRM in the future. Now, number 8, this one is just a bit of fun. I think that the fall of 2026 will be one of the busiest release windows in gaming history. The last couple of years, particularly on Sony's side of things, has been pretty quiet for AAA games. In the fall of 2026, it will have been about 4 years since God of War Ragnarok, 5 years since Wolverine was announced, and 6 years since Naughty Dog released The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I'm not saying that all of these new games will for sure drop in the fall of 2026, but it's likely that if they do drop next year, it will be in this window because, well, there's a massive GTA 6 sized black hole occupying the spring and summer. Heck, even 2025 is beginning to get a bit crowded to try and avoid launching into next year.
I've got big news. I am going to drop a brand new trailer for The Outer Worlds 2. What are you going to get? More planets, more chaos, and an actual release date now that GTA 6 got pushed to the spring. So, strap on in.
Just like major blockbusters, I think it's safe to assume that the other AAA games dropping in 2026 will try and space themselves out from GTA 6 because, let's be honest with ourselves, this will likely be the biggest game launch we've ever seen. If they're not dropping in early 2026, like before April, then I think it's safe to assume that major games will be releasing in the fall or late summer. Yes, it will be crowded, but honestly, it's probably better to go against 5 other AAA games than one GTA 6. Next up at number 7, I kind of buy into the theory that Mortal Kombat 1 was originally supposed to be Injustice 3. Now, odds are that this actually isn't the case, but I firmly believe that a lot of the mechanics in the game were definitely designed for the next Injustice. For one, NetherRealm hasn't strayed away from their release schedule of alternating between new Mortal Kombat and DC fighting games. The new cameo system, which allows a player to bring in a side character for a combo, seems like it would be a perfect fit for a sidekick like Robin or Kid Flash in an Injustice game. The DLC characters also feel like they would have been a better fit for a superhero game, like with Omni-Man, Homelander, and Peacemaker. And then there's just a bunch of little things, like how certain characters feel like they should be Injustice characters instead of Mortal Kombat ones. Like, Reptile's transformation ability looks like it easily could have been for Beast Boy. My theory is that during development of Injustice 3, Warner Bros. Told NetherRealm Studios that they needed to switch to another Mortal Kombat because, despite how popular superheroes currently are, the Injustice games have sold considerably less than Mortal Kombat. Obviously, Warner Bros. Has had some pretty big misses in recent years, so I can easily see them interfering with NetherRealm's traditional release slate. On top of that, James Gunn also recently took over DC and said that he wants video games to be a part of the overall connected universe with the TV shows and movies, so I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that Gunn might have asked NetherRealm to hit pause on their DC game until they could hammer out how they wanted to move the franchise going forward. Don't get me wrong, Mortal Kombat 1 was always going to come out, I just don't think it was meant to be released when it did. Speaking of releases, down to number 6, I think that Nintendo did a very un-Nintendo-like thing. They moved release dates up for a major first-party release. I believe that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was originally meant to be a launch title for the Switch 2. Think about it, it would have been the massive killer app for the console's launch, just like Breath of the Wild was for the Switch 1 release. Shout out to G.I. Joe 98 on Reddit for this theory because he brings up some great points. For one, the green portals in the shrines look as if they could have been originally designed with seamless transitions in mind. The Ascend animation also is a lot cleaner in the trailers than it is in the actual game, almost instant honestly, so it would make sense that the swimming animation is used to cover up loading times on an older device. Digital Foundry even went as far as to say that the clouds shown in the earlier trailers aren't capable on the original Switch's hardware. Now, all of this is great evidence as to why the game looks like it might have originally been a Switch 2 launch title, but since the console's release, this theory has lost a bit of steam. We actually got an updated Switch 2 version of Tears of the Kingdom, and unfortunately, it doesn't add seamless transitions or better cloud rendering. But the game is optimized and runs way better, almost as if it was supposed to be a Switch 2 exclusive. But with the game being done with development in 2023 and the Switch 2 stockpiling inventory and not launching for another 2 years, it made sense as to why Nintendo bumped up the release. Sure, it would have been a great launch title, but 2 years is a long time to sit on a game that's already done and can run on older hardware, even if it's not what the devs originally wanted. Rounding up our top 5, let's look at a classic one. Super Mario Bros. 3 is nothing but a play. Mario or Peach are never in any real danger, and the player is just an audience member watching a stage play. I mean, it's really obvious when you think about it, but it's never really flat out mentioned in the actual game. The game starts with a curtain opening. The level design features wires and bolts like it's a stage set. The angle of the shadows indicates stage lights, and you end each level by exiting stage right. Just to top it all off, the game ends with the curtain setting. But perhaps the biggest evidence of all that this whole game is a stage play is the fact that Miyamoto himself has explicitly come out and said that it is. Oh, well, I guess this isn't much of a conspiracy theory then, is it? Down to number 4, let's talk about the urban legend of Lavender Town Syndrome. As it turns out, Pokemon might be a bit more sinister than the adorable pocket monsters make it out to be. Way back in 1997, the original Pokemon anime had a major mishap where a sequence in a particular episode featured a bunch of flashing lights, causing seizures across Japan. As a result, more than 600 people, mostly children, were hospitalized. Now, this is almost definitely just an unfortunate mistake by the Pokemon Company, but one creepypasta insists that the episode that caused Pokemon shock was just a precursor for something far, far worse. Lavender Town Syndrome is the name for the supposed mass suicides that took place in Japan during the winter of 1997. The rumors say that at least 200 children between the ages of 7 and 12 became mentally ill after the Japanese release of Pokemon Red and Green. After reaching Lavender Town in the game, the children would become sick, often citing severe headaches and insomnia, but in extreme cases, going as far as committing suicide by hanging themselves or jumping from great heights. Supposedly, the original soundtrack for Lavender Town had higher frequencies that could only be heard by underdeveloped ears, such as children. Rumor has it that Satoshi Tajiri, the creator of the Pokemon games and Game Freak, wanted a sound that would annoy children, but ultimately ended up with something that was far too effective. The sounds were so extreme and intense that it drove the kids medically insane. The song was changed soon after the game's release, and the version that ultimately shipped worldwide had a different soundtrack than the original Japanese release. While this is a pretty fun theory, this one has gotta be 100% fake. I know I titled this video Theories I Believe, but there is just no evidence at all that Lavender Town Syndrome is real. It was just too fascinating of a theory to pass up. If it was real, I'm sure we would have heard about over 200 children committing suicide after playing a video game. I mean, the media has overreacted to lesser things than that. Now, at number 3, I'm pulling out a crazy one. Call of Duty is used to help recruit teenagers into the military. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous, but listen to the research I got on this one. Last year, Rosa Schwartzberg, a reporter for The Guardian, wrote this incredible article about gaming and the modern military entertainment complex that I'll link below. Schwartzberg reports that since 2018, the United States military has begun exploring unconventional avenues to recruit volunteers since the current rate of signups is the lowest it's been since the Vietnam War, when signups weren't exactly voluntary. So now, in 2025, the US has begun pouring in resources into video game marketing such as streaming partnerships and even official Army and Navy esports teams. In fact, Lieutenant Aaron Jones, the captain of the Navy's esports team, said in an interview that recruiters did a big look at where they were spending money, looking at where the next generation is. This is where they are. Whether it's Twitch or YouTube or Facebook gaming, this is what they love. If you think about it, this is pretty similar to how the United States military partners with major Hollywood blockbusters. Top Gun infamously got basically unlimited access to military aircraft and had the script updated to help encourage recruitment for young people. The Transformers series hyped up the US Army and received extensive access to military equipment and locations, including actual bases to film on. Captain Marvel was directly supported by the Air Force as a recruitment tool and even reported a substantial increase in female applicants after the movie's release. My point is, the military recruiting people through modern entertainment isn't such a novel idea. It's just a bit weird to see it in video games. A quick little bonus point here, while I was doing research, I found this article that covers a writer named Dave Anthony. Anthony was a writer for the Call of Duty Black Ops 2 campaign and was literally recruited by the Pentagon to discuss the future of real-world warfare. Seriously, the story goes that Steve Grundman, a former Pentagon official, was watching his son play Black Ops 2 and was blown away by how realistic and authentic the story was, particularly the utilization of drone warfare. He was so impressed that he tracked Dave Anthony down and personally invited him to DC to share ideas with a panel of experts. So there you go. Maybe being a nerd can get you places after all. Down to number 2, let's talk about an all-time classic, the Madden Curse. This one is simple, but it's got some of the most traction out of any other theory on this list. Now, the theory goes that players who appear on the Madden cover will have a worse season the following year or even end up missing it due to injury. It starts in 1999 with Garrison Hearst, a running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Hearst had a great 1997 season, and the 1998 season, the year he was the Madden cover, was also going exceptionally well. Hearst was breaking records and leading the Niners to the playoffs, but he ended up breaking his ankle in the postseason so badly that he ended up missing the next 2 years of football and was never the same again. The following year, Barry Sanders graced the cover of Madden. Shockingly, Sanders abruptly retired from football and would never play again. So Madden quickly switched the 2000 cover to Packers running back Dorsey Levens, who just appeared in back-to-back Super Bowls. Green Bay ended up missing the playoffs that year, and Levens injured his knee, never reaching the same level he was before the game cover. In 2001, Eddie George covered Madden and had a pretty great regular season. The curse reared its ugly head in the playoffs when Eddie George bobbled a pass that ended up getting intercepted and helped the Ravens beat George and the Titans. He ended up getting hurt the following season and, you guessed it, was never the same. In 2002, Dante Culpepper was the cover player. He had an incredible previous season with 33 touchdowns and an 11-5 record as a first-time starter. In the year of his cover, he had a massive regression with 16 fumbles, only 14 touchdowns, and a record of 4-7 before suffering a season-ending knee injury. In 2003, Marshall Faulk was one of the league's top rushers, but after his Madden photo shoot, his stats fell drastically. He suffered an ankle injury early on in the season and was never fully healthy. He never rushed for 1,000 yards again and ended up retiring just a few years later. In 2004, quarterback Michael Vick was on the cover and, no joke, the day after the game's release, shattered his fibula and missed almost the entire season. He then was jailed later on, but that's an unrelated incident. In 2005, Ray Lewis was the cover player. It looked like he was going to defeat the Madden curse when he broke his wrist in the preseason and decided to play through it. But the curse always takes its toll, and as a result, Lewis had one of the worst seasons of his career statistically, and then injured himself the following season. 2006, Donovan McNabb, a 5-time Pro Bowler, injures himself in the first game of the season, missed about half the season, and never made a Pro Bowl again. 2007, Shaun Alexander fractured his foot and was never the same again, retiring just a few seasons later. 2008, Vince Young, an Offensive Rookie of the Year, had a major regression and was eventually benched during the season. 2009, Brett Favre got traded to the Jets. In 2010, EA put 2 players on the cover, Troy Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald. Both got injured and their teams fell short of playoff expectations. 2011, Drew Brees had a great regular season, but the Saints ended up losing the biggest upset in NFL playoff history against the Seahawks. 2012, Peyton Hillis suffers an injury and is relegated to a career backup. 2013, Calvin Johnson miraculously avoided any bad luck, but ended up shocking the world by retiring just a few seasons later after only 9 years in the league. 2014, Adrian Peterson's production fell off a cliff and ended up missing all but 1 game of the 2014 season. In 2015, Richard Sherman made it through the season, but his stats dipped considerably. 2016, OBJ has a decent season, but is injured the following year and eventually traded to the Browns. 2017, Gronk has an injury-riddled season and only started 6 games, missing the playoffs entirely. 2018, Tom Brady loses one of the biggest Super Bowl upsets in history to backup quarterback Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles. 2019, Antonio Brown. Just Antonio Brown. In 2020, Patrick Mahomes survives the curse, but did end up missing some games due to a mid-season knee injury. In 2021, Lamar Jackson has a significantly worse year with fewer touchdowns and more interceptions than the season prior. 2022, Mahomes and Brady. Not a bad season for either, but both missed the Super Bowl, which was an anomaly at this point. Madden 23 featured the legend himself, who had passed away the previous year. Madden 24 had Josh Allen, who had a decent year but couldn't overcome the Chiefs in the playoffs once again. 2025, Christian McCaffrey just had one of the greatest running back seasons ever, only to suffer major injuries and miss most of the season. And now, 2026 has arrived with Saquon Barkley. Not saying he's cursed, but the odds are kinda stacked against him. Look, in the NFL, players get hurt every year and regression is kind of the norm, but with the rocky history that the Madden cover curse has shown us, maybe try to be extra careful, Saquon. Now finally, at number 1, Saddam Hussein attempted to build a supercomputer using PlayStation 2 consoles. Okay, now this one is nuts. According to an anonymous United States Defense Intelligence agent, Sony had reportedly shipped 4,000 PS2s to Iraq. This unidentified source said that most Americans don't realize that each PlayStation unit contains a 32-bit CPU, every bit as powerful as the processor found in most desktop and laptop computers. The graphics capabilities of a PlayStation are a staggering 5 times more powerful than the graphics cards found in most PCs. So, as the story goes, Saddam was planning on buying PS2s in bulk, tearing them down, and then taking the beefed up hardware to build a supercomputer that would guide his ballistic long-range missiles. Supposedly, a group of 12 to 15 PS2s could provide enough computing power to guide an Iraqi UAV. Now, I know this all sounds crazy, but there's actually some evidence to this. In 2003, researchers at the University of Illinois created a supercomputer using a combined 70 PlayStation 2s. It was even recorded in the top 500 most powerful computers of the year, with an estimated half a teraflop in power. In fact, the United States Air Force even built a supercomputer a few years later using over 1,500 PS3s. So, a supercomputer is certainly possible. In 2000, Japan placed export restrictions on the console, acknowledging that it had the capability to be reutilized in a military environment. Since Iraq couldn't import PCs due to worldwide sanctions, they had to get their hands on modern technology somehow. And with the relatively cheap price of a gaming console, importing PS2s in bulk seemed like a legitimate option. So, since this is evidently possible, did Saddam Hussein actually build a PlayStation supercomputer? I believe that Saddam might have tried, but without the proper equipment and software, converting a PS2 into a supercomputer would be incredibly difficult. At the time of me writing this, there's no official word on whether or not Saddam built his PlayStation supercomputer, but since the world hasn't succumbed to nuclear fallout yet, I'm gonna go ahead and say no, he probably didn't build his epic gaming PC. But that's enough of my rambling. This video is already way too long. What did you guys think of this list? Which conspiracies stood out to you the most? Which ones do you believe could actually be real? Do you have any other theories you'd like to share below? Maybe I'll do a part 2 in the future. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll catch you in the next one.